What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Postgame Podcast. I'm your host, Cory Smith, here with Brian Geisinger. Brian, going to discuss some NC State men's basketball. NC State finds a way. I say finds a way as if they weren't blowing them out the entire game, but does find a way to hold on late. A game where NC State led by, I believe, as much as 28 points, and then ends up winning by 14. So obviously, allowed Ole Miss to kind of get back into this game. I believe the closest they got it down to was like 12 or 13 points. So it wasn't like it was ever really in doubt, but just, not as good of second half effort as you expected from a team that was winning by 20 plus points in the first half. Obviously, Paul McNeil continuing his trend that we saw from earlier in the week. And then Quadir Copeland continuing to be, consistent force for NC State. McNeil and Alyn down low. And then obviously, Alyn Breed getting, really kind of carving out more of a role for himself. Did start in this game. I believe it was the second start that he's had of the season. And then, Darrion Williams, we'll talk about the struggles that he's had from that standpoint. But before we jump into things, man, just your thoughts on this game and where things stand for NC State.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ole Miss just looked pretty rough tonight or this afternoon in Greensboro, and I thought State took advantage of that. They got downhill. They got into the paint, especially Copeland. This was a great defensive game. Maybe great's a little too strong, but a good defensive game from the Pack. And certainly to get a win over a power conference team heading into a week off or whatever for winter break is certainly a good thing. But I think there's a lot to get into from lineups, rotation. Honestly, like on both sides of the floor with both Mississippi State or with Ole Miss and NC State. And yeah, you mentioned Paul McNeil. Like he's now back above 42% on threes on over 16 attempts from deep per 100 possessions, that's high volume, high efficiency. Obviously, the last two games have really boosted those numbers up. He's been ridiculous, but he's on pace for like the best, like a really maybe not like historical, but one that would be you have to go back to like the Scott Wood, Ralston Turner days. Do you know what I mean? To sort of find like a high volume, 3-point shooter like this that State's had that's been like this, had this much usage from deep and this level of efficiency. So shout out to Paul for sort of like, again, having another big game from deep. And also I thought his work on the glass, defensive glass was showed up today too. So, yeah, good win for State. But yeah, I think also Ole Miss has got a lot of stuff to figure out because if where they're trending right now, they are set up for a long season in the SEC.
Yeah, that was one of the things we were texting before we jumped on this pod, and it was like, man, this is a really good win for NC State, one that they absolutely needed. And I was like, yeah, I also don't think Ole Miss is going to be very good based off of what I saw today. And they're kind of in a similar situation where, not to say that it's a very similar situation, just from a production standpoint, your best player is not being your best player, and there's not a lot of players stepping up around them. Whereas for NC State, Darrion Williams not playing his best basketball recently, and again, we'll talk about that as kind of where things stand there. But NC State has had a lot of players around him step up, and one of those, like, I want to jump into it too. I know you talked a little bit about Paul McNeil, but like where things are trending for him, I think it's amazing how quick your memory changes on a player once they get going. Because it's hilariously, like a week ago, we're on one of these podcasts and had somebody mention the fact that Paul McNeil shouldn't have, Paul McNeil needs to stop taking as many shots as he does. Like, what's really the point of Paul McNeil? Are we already talking about, him having a letdown season? And now we're looking at the last two games and 12 of 18 last time out, which is 66%, 6 of 12. I take that back. Yeah, 12 of 18 shooting last game, 11 of 17 from three. In this game, 6 of 12 from three. Just otherworldly numbers for him in the last two games. I mean, how big is this turnaround for him personally, but also for the team as a whole and having, that bona fide 3-point shooter? I mean, I said it before the Ole Miss game. I was like, the reason why they needed him to go off against Texas Southern is because you're about to face a team in Ole Miss that ranks, I believe they were 185th in the country coming into this game in terms of perimeter defense.
He is, I mean, he's the home run hitter for them on offense. You know, he steps into the batter's box. It's nothing but uppercuts, right? Like that's what this guy is trying to take the top off the defense with his ability to roam around the arc and shoot threes. State schemes up a lot of stuff for him. Will Wade talked about it after the Texas Southern game, said he called every play on the play sheet for Paul McNeil in that game. But Paul also doesn't need plays called for him too, right? Like he's pretty, not only is he a very good shooter, he's good at moving without the ball. And I think his relocations into space along the perimeter, playing off of Quadir Copeland, Darrion Williams, Trey Holloman, Alyn Breed, Van Allen Lubin, he runs himself into a couple of like clean catch and shoot looks every game. And he does have kind of a funky shot a little bit. Like he does, if anything, like I think sort of the next step for Paul beyond this season will be like one sort of like rounding out his offense, because he really is in kind of like a specialist role right now. Like he is just a catch and shoot bomber and ball mover for State. And like last season, he showed some flashes on the ball. You know, I remember us talking late last season after like the Stanford, the Louisville games, when Paul got to play with the ball a little bit more, and just like he did show you he can create some too. In State, because of Copeland, because of Holloman, Breed, Williams, they have all these other guys, you know, Lubin, all these other guys that play on the ball. Paul really is just like sort of this wild spacing agent for the offense. And he's played that role perfectly. You know, 4% turnover rate. He really is just in this like catch and finish role this season. 83% from the line, 42% from deep, 50% on twos. He hasn't taken a ton of twos. The vast majority of his shots are catch and shoots from beyond the arc. I tweeted this out after the Texas Southern game too, but he hit those 11 threes against Texas Southern. He took one combined dribble on those 11 3-pointers. everything was off the catch. And the one dribble he had was literally like, it was in the first half, he hit a three and kind of on like kind of a broken possession in the left corner. And the dribble was like literally like a gather dribble. Like him collecting the loose ball so he could then move back into the corner. That was it. So it was like a Klay Thompson, you know, shooting performance, just quick release, quick trigger, no dribbles, just let it fly. And so he's nailing his role. But I think, I sort of said he kind of has a funky shot. I'll be kind of curious to see if he can get to a place where he can like speed it up a little bit or like make it a little bit. He kind of has that like move. He needs to like step into it sometimes. And I think when he's trying to create with the dribble and get separation late, it's hard for him to do that, you know, late in the shot clock, because teams are just sitting on the jumper. So speeding it up, and I think he's got some craft with the ball. Just we'll see, you know, if at some point this season State starts to like look to him a little bit more for creation. But for right now, he's nailing the role. And I do think his work on the defensive glass has been significant too. 16% defensive rebound rate. Or just under is not nothing. I mean, that's probably third among rotation players. It's either third or fourth among rotation guys, along with the centers, you know, Lubin and Sanye. It's above Darien Williams. It's above Quadir Copeland. And again, like if you watch him, he's not just getting GPs off the free throw. Like he's not just like rebounding missed free throws, right? Because he's not even in the position to get those. Like he's getting out of area rebounds at times on the defensive side of the floor. So he might be like a little one-dimensional offensively at the moment, but with, you know, at 6'5", 6'6", he's trying defensively. He's not always in the right spots, but he's trying hard and he's working on the glass, turning into a real nice, you know, two-way wing. And again, one of the top shooters in the conference. So really a huge shout out to, I think, everyone that sort of like kind of came together to make this work. Like the analytics guys for saying, hey, we need to retain Paul. And for Paul for putting in the work, and then for the coaching staff to sort of like trust him and to know that, hey, you got to keep riding him. Because last thing I want to say is like, Cory, you were talking about how there was maybe some chatter before the Texas Southern game about Paul's season. He had sort of like 3 slumpy kind of games. The worst thing for this guy would be to stop shooting. I think we talked about this with earlier this season too. And you want him to take the right shots. You don't want him to force it. You want to take him, bad shots early in the clock, but like he's got the green light. And the problem for him would be if he just lost confidence in the shot and he stopped shooting it. But there he is. You hear the stories Will Wade talking about after the Texas Southern game, how Paul stayed for 45 minutes, 60 minutes after practice or shoot around and got up shots. And like, he should keep doing that. That's a sweet shot he's got, and it can make him a ton of money if he keeps doing it. And he's going to have more 3-game stretches this season that are like the, Asheville Liberty can't. Like, he takes a ton of threes, right? But and you're hoping by the end of the season, he comes out in that like the low 40s or high 30s. But he's gonna have stretches where he shoots 60 whatever percent over 3 games from deep, and he's gonna have stretches where he shoots 15, 20%, and that's gonna be tough because like State's offensive ceiling is lower when they don't have Paul floating around and hitting shots. So he's a big deal for them. It's why they need to continuing having guys like Copeland, Williams, like Holloman, like those guys. Their creation is so important for them. And teams are going to have to always guard Paul. So like his movement is going to always like help get other guys open. And State's offense does a good job leveraging that too. But just like, I would say keep riding with this guy because like the highs are so good, that it's worth sort of like sitting through some of the tougher performances where he's going to go, 1 of 8 from deep or whatever. Cause he can, the next game, it's a high like if you're a 3-point specialist, it's a high variance game. And so he's going to be up and down this season, but I would still keep riding with him because he's giving you effort defensively. Teams still have to guard him, and you just never know. There's a chance he could combust. And then whomever you're playing, whatever their game plan is, like he can just throw it over the top rope with his shooting. So very impressed with Paul so far this year.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the way you're holding the mic, for whatever reason, it keeps popping up. You're holding it like this, so it just kept popping up like a thumbs up emoji. It's messing me up the whole time. But great analysis. As
long as the volume was okay on it, hopefully.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I was worried there for a second.
Well, the thing I was going to add to that is also like you look over the previous games, and he was still taking threes. Like he was still taking 4+ threes every single game. So they were still going, all right, we're going to live with whatever you shoot. The thing about this game too, that I thought was even more impressive last game, I mean, he made 5 straight to start out. And it's like, all right, he's red hot. Keep feeding him. He's going to take as many as he can possibly take tonight. And we're going to get him back off the schneid in this game. He started 0 for 3 in this game, and other guys started shooting better than he did. I mean, Trey Holloman was hitting the 3 before him. A couple other guys were hitting some threes, and it's like, or Quadir Copeland, I believe, early on too. It's like, all right, well, maybe that's the hot hand we need to feed. And then all of a sudden, I believe Paul hit the next 3 in a row, and then hit 4 of 8 in the first half. So once he gets hot, it's like, all right, we're just going to keep going to Paul and keep feeding him. And I mentioned him too. I mean, the one guy off the bench in this game, Trey Holloman, actually coming off the bench, Alyn Breed getting the start in this one. Forgot to ask, honestly, in postgame why that was necessarily the case here. But, Alyn Breed has been more of a low usage player for NC State so far this year. So maybe that's the reason why he's a little bit more of a guy that kind of, all right, just moves the ball, gets to the next spot, gets guys open, and then continues on. Whereas Trey Holloman's been a little bit more of a, free shooting, kind of taking out a ton of outside shots. And it paid off today. 4 of 7 for him in this game, 16 points overall and 6 of 10 shooting. Did only have the 1 assist in this game, but, 2 turnovers too. But played 26 minutes in this one and felt like this was one of his more productive games. The shot was clearly there for him, but also, the fact that Quadir Copeland is playing as well as he is at the point allows Trey Holloman to just play more of a shooting guard role in this offense. And Quadir Copeland finishing with 9 assists in this game.
Yeah, I've been wondering since game 1 this season against Central, sort of like where come middle of the season the like the rotation and hierarchy would look like with the point guard spot on the roster.
Yeah.
And mostly because I was curious if Alyn Breed would play himself into a spot in the rotation he has after sort of starting the season on the periphery. And
I think some of that was still due to injury for him early on, and now it's
fair.
I still wouldn't say he's fully healthy, and Darrion Williams isn't fully healthy either. But the fact that he's able to play through that and continue to feed other guys, I think is what continues to get him more minutes. Yeah.
And Breed gives him, he's a little bit more of a connector, lower usage guy. He's sort of like in there to help. He can still drive and get his own shot. He can, he's comfortable shooting from deep. He's not like the sort of like explosive scorer and creator that Holloman is.
Yeah.
But I kind of wondered if we would get to a point in the season where you'd see Copeland and Holloman staggered a little bit more. Because, like, I know State coming into the season talked about getting Trey off the ball, right? And that was going to have to be a part of the offense because if you've got Copeland and Williams, those guys are going to have the ball a ton. Okay, well then Trey's going to be spotting up, and State believed in his catch and shoot ability. But Trey, he can create. Like, he wants to dribble the ball and run pick and roll. He wants to attack and transition, and so I kind of think maybe there's I'd have to dig into the numbers a little bit more on this. But I would be kind of curious to sort of like see what their numbers look like when Copeland and Holloman, when they play together versus when one of them is on and the other one's on the bench and vice versa. Because I think Holloman, if you could actually, I'm not saying this is going to be what they're going to do all season, but hypothetically, if you could get him to like lean into the like microwave guy off the bench, the sort of like Lou Williams 6-man kind of role.
Yeah.
He would be awesome. Like he would like profile really nicely as that kind of player, and you would still close a ton of games with he and Copeland on the court together because like, you want your most talented and best players and stuff like that out there. What they can also do too is when they stagger those guys, they can sort of like get to I think lineups that maybe have a little bit more like defensive upside. You can get to some larger lineups, especially if you play Paul and Matt Abel together with Copeland, and all of a sudden you don't have to hide a 6'1" guy defensively and you're switching all the time. Maybe it helps a little bit there. I have to assume that ultimately they're hoping to like work Trey back into the starting lineup. And he's going to be a big piece no matter what, whether he comes off the bench, whether he starts. He's still going to close a ton of games for them. He still needs to make shots and make plays. But Copeland has the ball so much. And so sometimes, and obviously he plays big minutes. So even if you're staggering those guys, like, Trey's not going to get that many minutes with Q off the court. But that is a way to sort of like allow Trey to get to run the offense some without Quadir too, so I kind of like that, and just bringing him off the bench makes that a little bit easier to do. But we're too early in the season, I think, to make any sort of like grand proclamations, but something to monitor, something to keep up with numbers wise, because I think there's even if this decision was sort of made to sort of like hopefully boost effort and stuff like that, I think there could be still like basketball sorts of reasons behind it too. Certainly something that I will be monitoring as the calendar flips to ACC play in 2026.
Yeah, and this is not to just kind of like glaze over, Quadir Copeland or McNeil and Alyn, because these are performances we've seen from them consistently. Like, and that's kind of what Will Wade talked about after the game. He said, that the reason why you saw a mostly rotation of 7 players, those 7 players being the starters that we talked about: Darrion Williams, Paul McNeil, Alyn Breed, Quadir Copeland, McNeil and Alyn, and then Trey Holloman or Alyn Breed now at this point are going to come off the bench. And then Moussa Sanye today was really kind of the 7th man in that rotation. We expect to see Matt Abel continue to get more minutes, and then we expect to see, it sounds like Scotty Abube has kind of carved out a little bit more of a rotation player role. Went in today, 2 minutes, 2 fouls, +2, got out of the game. So that's, every once in a while, you're probably going to see that just to kind of get, NC State close to the bonus or something along those lines. But that's kind of where, his role is at this point. You've seen every once in a while he's been a scorer too, but Just your thoughts off the bench for NC State with Moussa Sanye and what they saw from him today, because, man, I don't know the last time I've seen a team only have one offensive rebound in the first half. And that's what Ole Miss did today. And a major reason for that was because, NC State had 17 defensive rebounds. And I want to make sure I get it right here. Moussa Sanye had 5 of those. So he had almost a third of their defensive rebounds in the first half, finished with 7 overall rebounds, but 5 defensive rebounds in the first half alone. Didn't get a ton of run in the second half. Ended up having a foul and a turnover. So that's the reason why. But how big can it be for NC State's big man rotation, but also defensive side of the basketball if Moussa Sanye is truly able to kind of start carving out a role here?
Yeah, this to me is like the first like real significant development, like rotation wise, of State's season. I think Sanye has been very good this season. I've talked about it on the pod several times now. And I think he's been up and down, but I think overall he's been pretty impactful. I think at 6'10", 230, 235 for a guy who moves like he does, coordinated, good speed, covers a ton of ground defensively. Like State just doesn't have another. I know like Scotty Abube, he's got good size and he can give them some rim protection and stuff too. But like Sane is just like talent wise, movement wise, is just on a different level. And State doesn't have another guy like him. Like as great as Ven-Alyn Lubin has been this season, like he's a skilled 5, like a face-up 5. And Sanye can give you more rim protection. He's the best rim protector on the roster, sort of like period, point blank. He's second in defensive rebound rate on the roster behind only Ven-Alyn Lubin. He's second in offensive rebound rate behind Ven-Alyn Lubin. And again, the rim protection and just like his added size and length helps State no matter what scheme they're playing. And I do kind of like him and Lubin playing next to each other. Like that's clearly something. They started those two together against Texas Southern, and they played some together today. And so if State is switching 1 through 5 with those two guys also on the court at the same time, they still got more. They can still have more size at the rim. They can have more size to sort of like put out fires behind the play if there are breakdowns or they need to switch someone out of the post. They've got another big guy back there they can do that with. And if they're hard hedging and blitzing ball screens with Ven-Alyn Lubin 25 feet from the rim, well, the 3 guys on the backside of the play that are going to have to guard 3-on-4, it's not a 6'1" and 2 6'6" guys. It's 2 6'6" guys and then a 6'10" guy that can protect the rim with Sanye. And he's almost 7% block rate, 6.5% block rate, 3.5% steal rate. Those are actually big numbers. Those are really good numbers. So like, I think his sort of like underlying defensive data is like really, really encouraging. And you can just see it. Like these numbers are not updated for today's game so far, but coming into the Ole Miss game, Lubin and Sanye had played 23 minutes together. State was plus 22 with those two on the court. Again, that was prior to today. And like Sanye is one of those guys, like he's been, and I know all of this stuff comes with a small sample alert, but like he's been a big on-off, like sort of like switch piece for State so far this season. When he and Lubin have played together, again, tiny sample, but 80% defensive rebound rate, which is a great, great, great number. And with Sanye on the court, State has a block rate of 14.5%. When he sits, that goes down to 9.4%. When Sanye plays, State has a steal rate of 16%. When he sits, that goes down to 9%. They are better rebounding on both sides of the court. They're better defensively, and they're more efficient offensively when this guy plays. So, and it's just across the board. They're just, if you can go to sort of like on-off splits, he's lighting things up for State. So I don't think he's had a perfect start to the season, but in these numbers, there's certainly some noise baked into them this early in the season, especially when some of the games have been against, so-so competition. Yeah. But I think there are like basketball reasons, on-court basketball reasons that can justify some of the data, some of the very like rough data that we're looking at early on. And it really has to do with his length, his athleticism, his ground coverage, and what that can do for you in passing lanes, on the glass, protecting the rim, finishing around the rim. Like, he gives State a guy that can kind of like play above the rim a little bit too, which is a nice piece. You know, sort of a quasi lob threat offensively, which they don't really have. You know, as good as Williams and Lubin are, those guys are sort of like below the rim, you know, kind of finishers, or like at the rim finisher if you're someone like Lubin. And then obviously if Sané is going to play more at the 4 or in sort of these like double big lineups with McNeil and Lubin, it's going to come at the sacrifice of guys like Terrence Arsenault and Jerry Dang. And in theory, you're losing some shooting, right? You know, if you're taking a wing off the court and putting a, you know, Sané's 0 of 2 from deep this season. Lubin flirts with the 3, but it's sort of been an inconsistent feature of his game for 4 years now in college. But like, Arsenault has struggled shooting the ball this season. Dang gives you obviously some stretch offensively, but defensively, it's a struggle fest, and offensively he doesn't really give you much other than the shooting. So you're just going to live, if you're going to double down on defense, then it becomes either Arsenault or Sané, and Sané just is a superior rim protector and rebounder at this point, you know? And so if you're going to say, okay, well, we're going to have sort of like 2 non-shooters on the court, then at least take the guy is the superior rebounder and rim protector, you know, with Moussa Sané. Yeah. So, and it's not like he's pretty skilled offensively. Like, he can do some stuff with the ball, and for whatever it's worth, like, he played a lot of 4 in Spain before coming to NC State. So he sort of was playing almost out of position at times to start this season. So, you know, playing the 5, and he's going to play a lot of the 5 this season for State. But I think there are a lot of reasons to sort of think that the lineups with Sané and Lubin can work, especially if you play it with shooters like, you know, Holloman, Abel, McNeil. Like, State will still be able to space the floor in the half court.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially if, you know, if Darrion Williams does kind of snap out of this funk that he's been in over the last several games, you know, maybe he slides down as someone suggested. I can't find it now. Yeah, Jonathan said maybe play Williams at the 3 a little bit and, you know, slide him down. It's funny because I remember saying that preseason, and a lot of people kind of scoffed at it. Even Casey Morcell that we had on the podcast was like, "Did you just say put him at the 3 and try to keep him there?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, if he's shooting the ball as well as he did, especially early on in the season from 3-point range, that gives you another 3-point shooter, and then you have 2 guys down low that can dominate the paint both offensively and, you know, look, I mean, let's be honest. Like, so far what we've seen from McNeil and Lubin, it hasn't been great defensively. It's funny because he actually had the more points today at 15 points and, you know, comes away with 2 rebounds in this game and shot 7 of 8 overall. But he ends up with a plus-minus of 0. Moussa Sané finishes with a plus-minus of plus 13. So there's a little bit of a reason why, you know, the defense matters here. Now, again, McNeil Lubin, this is not a shot at him by any stretch. He played 31 minutes today. He's played 35-plus minutes multiple times this year because you've needed another guy there, and now finally getting that is significant. The other one I wanted to point out here, too, I don't want to, like, completely finish with a negative, but I just want to talk about, you know, kind of concern now at this point because, you know, 3 of the guys that we're talking about here that were not in the rotation today really heavily. I mean, Darrion Williams was in the rotation, but just not on the score sheet as much. 1 point for him, 0 for 8 shooting, 0 for 4 from 3-point range. Hit one of his 2 free throws that he had, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 turnovers in this game in 27 minutes. It's just, and again, this is after a game where he's coming off, you know, he missed the Texas Southern game with a shoulder injury, and the plan was, all right, we're going to get him healthy, give him a full week off, and have a chance to get in here and produce against Ole Miss. And that just didn't happen. And it's interesting too because, like, I don't know how much you can see on TV, but at one point when he was going for an out of bounds play after he missed a 3-pointer. The ball comes off the rim and he's going for it, and it trails him all the way out of, like, past the courtside seats on the baseline there. And as he's going for the basketball, he's coming back and just, like, I mean, just every cuss word in the book towards himself, clearly just upset with himself for just not making, you know, open looks and not being able to create off of that. It just feels like I talked about last game with Miles, how much it was like, it felt like, the offense was unlocked because Paul McNeil got going. Feels like this offense could get to another level if you can get Darrion Williams back to being Darien Williams, right?
I've talked about McNeil as like the ceiling raiser for them offensively. To me, and Copeland plays a role in this too, but like a significant role. But Williams is sets the floor. You know what I mean? Like as good because he has the chance to be one of the top playmakers, not only in the ACC but in the country. And I've been sort of like confused by his, or just like not confused, but I've been, a little, I guess we'll say confused. I've been like a little confused by his, even before the injury, just sort of like by his usage this season. I mean, at times he's been used as like a spacer. At times while Copeland is sort of like cooking in the middle of the court. At times they've used him in the post, which I think is a good way to use him. At times they've used him in the pick and roll, operating pick and roll with Lubin or Sané as a screener. That's good usage. At times they've used him as like a off ball mover coming off down screens, like they might, Paul McNeil. Darrion can, when he's fully optimized, can kind of do everything. But for me, like this guy, one of the reasons why I loved him so much at Texas Tech, one of the reasons why I was so bullish on him coming into the season as like the hub of State's offense, was his ability to run inverted pick and roll and get two defenders on the ball. And forgive me because I know I'm beating a dead horse here, and I'm probably going to be doing it a bunch more the next 3 months, so just get used to it. But like one of the other games I watched yesterday was, I'm finishing the film right now, but I'm clipping the Texas Tech Duke game up in, Duke blew a 17-point lead in this game. One of the huge pieces for Texas Tech in this game was Lawan Watts, who transferred in from Washington State, where he played with Nate Calmise, who's at Wake Forest now, and Cedric Coward, who's with the Memphis Grizzlies. So I watched a lot of Watts' film. Really liked him last season. Grant McCasland and Texas Tech have taken him and just put him in the Darien Williams role. And I'm finished clipping like the first like 3 quarters of the Duke Texas Tech game. In that game alone, in that portion of that game alone, Texas Tech has run probably 12 to 15 inverted pick and rolls where Watts is the ball handler, and Christian Anderson or Atwell, one of their guards is setting the screen and then popping out. And Watts is just going downhill at Cam Boozer, or if he gets a switch, he's taking Darren Harris to the paint. That was what Texas Tech did last season with Darien Williams too. Once they found they had something, they could create mismatches with this guy with Williams and these pistol sets or these inverted looks, and they would just spam it. And I kind of keep waiting for State to sort of like double down on that and like really lean into it. We've seen it in pieces, not like it hasn't been a part of the offense, but ultimately Williams is malleable because he's such a good shooter and he makes quick decisions off the ball. So like you can use him in different ways. Today's performance is concerning. Like 0 of 8 from the field after coming off of an injury is not awesome, but I think hopefully with some time off around the holiday, he can get healthy or a little more healthy, a little more rest, and then kind of come back rejuvenated. And if I were a part of State staff, I would find his 20 best plays, you know what I mean, especially from early in the season. And I'd be showing it to him on film and be like, we're going to, big fella, we're going to do this, this, and this with you. Like, this is how we're going to get you going. This is how you and Paul are going to work together and get unlocked. He's way too good of a player to just have him like parked in the garage. You know what I mean? Like He's way too good. He's super talented. He's super skilled, and he is such a mismatch piece that I do think State has to push the button more with him and try to get him either a switch against a smaller player, or if the opposing defense wants to avoid switching a smaller player onto him, they're going to, hedge and trap those screens, and then State gets to play 3-on-4 on the, or 4-on-3 on the backside. But to me, he just is an automatic way to get a double team in the post, or a trap when he's running these inverted ball screens, and State can take advantage of the advantage and make plays off of it. So my thing for me, like, obviously I want to see him shoot a good ball, but it also really comes down to like the usage. Where are the touches? Where are they coming from? What's the spacing look like around it? Who's screening for him? Like, to me, all of that stuff really, really matters. And I think it's important that State get it going the back half of the season.
Yeah, it's funny because, Jonathan was saying here, do we have the pieces to do what you're describing? Do they need a JPT Toppin? And then, Colton said, no, we don't. And it's a problem. Williams is supposed to be our JT Toppin. I agree with that somewhat, because I do think they brought him in to be that role. But now I think you can look around and say, all right, what do we have outside of him? And not to say that, necessarily you're going to have McNeil and Lubin be your JT Toppin. I don't think that he's necessarily at that level, but he is somebody that you can feed down low and get that kind of, not necessarily you're going to get 20 plus points out of him on a consistent basis, but you can feed him down low and be able to attract attention there. And then I think the more and more that a guy like Paul McNeil becomes consistent, becomes a little bit more of that kind of like Christian Anderson type of player, what you have in this Texas Tech, that Texas Tech system, he can have a little more trust in dishing it out to him. So if you do run inverted pick and rolls, if you do take the ball a little bit outside of Quadir Copeland's hands, who, mind you, by the way, is also shooting pretty productively from 3-point range, and Trey Holloman, like, if you can use him more as a centerpiece in this offense at the 3, at the 4, it does feel like, and for him to, it's got to be some of him getting confidence and being able to make his own shots too, because you can't just draw attention to Darrion Williams when he's not making shots, because you're not seeing nearly as many double teams for him. You're not seeing nearly as many collapses for him. You're seeing teams actually sagging off a little bit and saying, all right, we're not going to let him drive inside, but we're going to make sure that he takes a shot from there, because his shot is just not falling outside of being able to drive inside. So, I'd say all of this with kind of a grain of salt, because it's the exact same thing we were just talking about with Paul McNeil. Like, it can change like that. So, Paul McNeil went from a guy that, I think I counted it up previously, prior to the Texas Southern game, had made 11 3-pointers in his previous 8 games, and then hits 11 3-pointers in one game, and then suddenly the next game hits 6. So, things can change drastically in this system, and things can change drastically in college basketball. And I think Darrion Williams has a chance to, if he can truly, and I know a lot of people, again, are skeptical of saying these types of things, but Darrion Williams is entirely too talented to keep being held down like he is right now. I'm not saying held down by the system, held down by his own doing at some points, because he's just, number one, a little bit of a shoulder injury, making sure that's fully healthy, but also, just finding his shot again, getting going where he's supposed to be going.
Yeah, look, you said the right names when sort of like talking about some of these inverted actions, like Paul, because of his shooting and because of the gravity and how much he should be geeking defenses out. Like, I would just a couple times per game, I'd have Paul screening for Darrion, or and slipping out, clear out a side of the court, or do it in the middle third, and try to use teams being worried about Paul getting hot from deep and getting these open catch and shoot threes. And if that sort of causes confusion or miscommunication or just scrambles them at the point of attack, then Darrion gets to turn and get downhill, and then when the help comes up, then he can drop it to McNeil and Lubin or Musa Sanye in the dunker spot for a dunk, or he can kick out to Trey Holloman for a corner 3. So McNeil is really the guy that I'd really lean into with that. But what I would do maybe more than anything is I'd come out, and whomever's playing the guard spots, whether it's Copeland, Holloman, McNeil, Abel, Breed, whomever, wherever the smallest or weakest defender is on the court, I would put a big target on that person's back, and I would have whomever that player is guarding be the screen setter, and I would push the button. So this player screens for Darien Williams until they adjust and stop it, and we're just going to smash the button. And maybe that's extreme, because again, there's other mouths to feed on the offense, and the Copeland pick and roll has like been humming so far this season. He's obviously been incredibly productive, but that to me is how you get more half court advantages and also like lower the turnover rate a little bit too, by having Williams sort of like toggle the, control the joystick on offense a little bit more. So that would sort of be my thought. And again, it could be McNeil. He'd be sort of like the best case scenario. But again, whomever the weakest perimeter defender is on the opposing team, if they're guarding Alyn Breed, Breed comes and sets the screen. If they're guarding Holloman, he comes and sets the screen. Abel, same difference. And I would just like lean into that as a way to kind of get him going, because he's really good at doing it. He can power an offense. He's not the kind of guy that you really want to play heliocentric basketball with. But last season, 27% usage rate, 23% assist rate, 14% turnover rate, good shooting from most levels of the floor. And I know he was getting to play with Toppin and Anderson, and there were some other good players on that Tech team last year. Kerwin Walton, Overton, who just buried State when they played Auburn a couple weeks ago. But I think there are a lot of ways to get him going because he's so skilled and so versatile. But to me, that is like the lowest hanging fruit for the offense to grab, and I would just be hopefully trying to find ways to. And again, if you want to have Copeland be a part of it because like he's very central to the offense, I'd love to find ways to get him rolling as a screener too, in ways that could hopefully open things up for Williams too.
Yeah, and last thing here from Jonathan, he said some good comments, man. I appreciate it, Jonathan. He said, I think when Q goes out, our offense slows down. That's when they need to lean into what Brian is saying. Let Williams be more of the focal point, whether it's having actions for him to finish at the rim or shooting threes, or whether it's for him being more of the point guard in the middle for this NC State team, kind of running those inverted pick and rolls. But all right. I think that'll just about wrap up everything we've got for this game. I don't know what keeps happening, but like for some reason the emojis keep popping up for you. I've got to go put my daughter to sleep or to bed. Sleep sounds weird. But I appreciate everybody.
Dark, grim, foreboding.
Right before Christmas too. No.
Yeah.
But so anyways, 76-62 win for NC State over Ole Miss. I appreciate everybody for jumping on. Brian, we've already talked about it. We'll have another podcast here soon to kind of discuss where NC State stands heading into ACC play. Maybe, hand out some kind of mid-season award, something along those lines. But we'll discuss all of that over the next week. I appreciate you for jumping on as always, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for everyone who tuned in. And yeah, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Everyone have a good time and be safe here this holiday season.
Yes, sir. Whatever you guys celebrate, happy holidays. Happy, we're celebrating Christmas. I just talked about the fact that, I'm drinking eggnog and everything like that. So I appreciate everybody for jumping on, and hope you guys have a Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and we will talk to you again soon.